When the school bell rings in Independence, Missouri this year, 14,000 students are trying something new, a 4-day week with Mondays off.
We're adding 35 minutes onto the day, so the instructional minutes will be almost exactly the same.
Superintendent Dale Hurl and his staff have spent months planning for this calendar change. His district is the largest in the state to move to a 4-day schedule. They'll offer 5th-day childcare to families for $30 a day.
If they weren't using any care, well, certainly that could be a potential cost that they otherwise would not have.
Nearly 900 school districts across 26 states now use a 4-day schedule. That's up from 650 districts in 2020.
I had no idea because it doesn't affect me, but apparently schools across the country are now going to a 4-day school week, 3-day weekends. This is awesome, bro. But as you mentioned off the top, they're adding 35 days. This particular district was adding 35 minutes per day to make up for that lost time. It's a proposal that apparently was getting some traction with work weeks with adults at work, and apparently was a big success. It's also, by the way, the reason it's on the damage report as well is because one John Iadarola is one of his 2 big platforms when he does run for the Senate one day. A 3-day weekend and also voting holiday. 2 things I can get behind. Everything else John talks about is nonsense. But still, it's big for him. Why can't we do it with schools? It's not always about the students though. It's still about the adults. Watch this.
Larger districts are now shortening their school week to recruit and retain teachers.
The number of teacher applications that we've received have gone up more than 4-fold.
Right now, there's not good evidence on the academic impacts of the 4-day school week.
Aaron Pallas with Teachers College Columbia University is watching the trend and argues there are better ways to tackle a teacher shortage.
The best way is to pay them better. And Missouri as a state ranks basically last or next to last in the country in terms of teacher salaries.
I think this really needs to lead to a bigger discussion nationwide about, what are we going to do to support the teaching profession?
Aaron Pallas there doesn't see much of a reason for it. Boo, 3-day weekends, bro, 3-day weekends. So when it comes to the 4-day work week and trying to give, I guess, different scenarios, there are some downfalls. Of course, they did point out the fact that last day, people are working probably still 5 days a week. When you have an extra day, what are you gonna do with your kids? We've got childcare problems. A little bit more from CBS News, they were talking about this though. Schools in other parts of the country have also noticed these patterns. In Chico, Texas, where the public school district also announced a shift to 4-day academic schedules this year, officials said positions that used to receive 5 applications were suddenly receiving more than 20. So these teachers are flocking for this. A little bit more. The 4-day work week has also been gaining supporters in recent years. Earlier along, the results of the world's largest trial of the program, as I mentioned earlier, showed workers were just as productive as they were during a 5-day work week. And the nonprofit that ran that pilot program called it a resounding success on virtually every dimension. So when you think about it, Ray, you've got folks that are leaving the teaching profession, specifically after COVID with the madness that's going on. Maybe some of the book burning is happening in some states in the country, and all the pressure on teachers and the lack of pay. Teachers don't get paid nearly enough for the amount of work that they do because they get summers off. Many times they're paying for equipment and supplies in their classrooms with money that they're just not getting paid enough of. So when you actually give them incentive to work, you might retain some good teachers rather than just some random person who's like, yeah, I'll teach. They're paying me $35,000. I don't want to do Starbucks right now. So they go on in that direction. And who suffers but our kids? A little bit more because CBS pointed out that this is exactly what one particular teacher is saying. Her name is Natalie Tran and she's up in Oakland. Says we need higher pay. We need more respect for the teaching profession because it's extremely difficult and we really need to have manageable class sizes. That's how this whole thing goes down, Ray. What's your thoughts?
All right. I'm gonna give an unpopular opinion.
So I was waiting for something.
I'll start with the popular one. I'll say I support the 4-day work week. I think that it's been demonstrated to people are just as productive on over 4 days as they are over 5. I think that a lot of us who have those types of sort of BS corporate jobs in the past know that there's a lot of days where we go into the office and we just delete all of the emails in our Outlook and we know that we don't have any work work to do. When it comes to education, I actually support a 6-day school week. I think that teachers should be paid 6-figure salaries. I think that we should fund education, but I think that education is such a cornerstone. What it should be of this country. It should be, we should be prioritizing it. I think that if we look to countries that have very successful educational outcomes, a lot of them don't have 5-day school weeks. They have 6 days, and they pay their teachers well. It is just viewed socially as a higher status job than the way that we view it in the United States. I mean, you said $35,000 a year to be a teacher. That's not far off, though. I mean, they are paid abysmally. They do really hard work. I worked in education for a long time. I worked at an alternative school for kids with disabilities. I was paid $12 an hour, maybe 11. Wow. And I mean, teachers weren't making much more than I was. It is hard work, and when you don't pay them adequately for the hard work they're doing, you're gonna have worse educational outcomes for the kids. And the teacher who emphasizes the small class sizes, that is something that's pivotal to having good educational outcomes, because one teacher can't be expected to manage a class of 45 kids with no help, and every kid is gonna learn a slightly different way. And they're all at different levels. It's absurd. The way that we handle education in this country is abysmal and pathetic, and we should be ashamed of ourselves.
It's almost planned to make it as bad as possible so that they can implement whatever kind of vouchers or systems where they take over other folks' schools and only serve certain folks. It's continuing that same hierarchical system where we'll destroy certain folks' lives and say they just didn't do it themselves, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And when they get their hands on a couple of bootstraps, someone snatches away from them and says, these are mine. But that's okay. Still more though, because I have a good idea. By the way, boo on your 6 days a week schedule. What the hell? Is it gonna be 3-hour days? What's going on with you? I have a good idea. Pay teachers more, shorten the work weeks. As far as the 4 days, you can extend the days a bit, that's fine. And also maybe we have situations where the extra day when it comes to childcare, we have a system where, because we have tons of money and we're the greatest, most richest nation on the face of the earth, that's paid for. And there's another thing that's paid for, it's also healthcare. There's another thing that's paid for, and that's lunches and food, so that kids who maybe have issues with eating enough, because then focus is off when you're not eating enough, or sleeping enough, or having the right situations where your parents are in a good enough of a normal standard, because there is some kind of a benefit in being an American, because we brag about it all the time, but everyone's living under the thumb of people who have it all. What is the benefit of being an American, and we brag about all the time, if we get nothing for all the money we give to this country through taxes? Just saying, because it goes straight back to the top. It's how this thing always works, and we can actually make our educational system much, much better. Let's go down to graphic 7, because this sticks out to me. Because this is how education system always happens. And when we have holes in it, this is who's affected mostly. CBS News pointed this out as well. When asked which schools suffered the most, Dan Goldhaber, who's the vice president of American Institutes for Research, said it's typically schools serving high poverty students and schools that are in rural areas and relatively far away from teacher education programs. So maybe kids that have certain conditions or diagnoses, ADHD, educational situations like that. Who's teaching them? Who's understanding how they work and how they learn? Because there's layers and elements to the way you teach kids. And if there's 45 kids in a class and you see one kid who's kind of not paying attention, maybe he's having trouble focusing, until we find out why and just start punishing kids instead, we have some of the same outcomes we have. Kids not really being interested in schools, thinking that they hate it. Maybe if they loved it, Rayvona's crazy ass idea of 6 days a week just might work.
I just think if we're falling, that's the politicians always complain, we're falling behind the rest of the world in education. We're falling behind them in mathematics. Our test scores are falling behind them. And they're not wrong. They're misdiagnosing the solutions, but they're not wrong about what the problem is, because the problem is that our education system is so poor. Of course, conservatives use that as a jumping point to hawk charter schools and to push voucher programs, which is absolutely not the solution. Because as you just showed from that CBS article, that the schools in the high poverty areas and the rural areas are the ones that are most impacted by our poor education system, by our teacher shortage, and those are the students who are going to, if we start eliminating public schools, those are the kids who are just just gonna have nowhere to go. Those are the kids who are gonna fall behind even further than we've allowed them to already. So, people don't have to get behind my 6-day school week, but I think that everyone should agree that we need to pay teachers more.
Yeah, I'm sure it's well thought out, Ray. I'm just giving you a little trouble. I'm still not on board.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.